Hello, Dr. Dennis Bielfeldt here from the Institute of Lutheran Theology's Christ School of Theology. Starting a series of lectures in this course called Faith, Knowledge, and Reason on the very important work of Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant, of course, is very important in basically synthesizing the critique of British empiricism from the standpoint of the German rationalist school, particularly the work of Leibniz and Wolff and others, actually Baumgarten and others. Kant himself was born in 1724. His mother was a pietist. He was born and lived up in the northern regions of what is now Poland, up along in the area of Königsberg. In fact, he taught at the university there at Königsberg, and Kant never went 40 miles away from Königsberg his entire life. His mother was a pietist convert. That means that she became a very staunch advocate of Lutheran pietism. Lutheran pietism, they're not non-dogmatic. I mean, dogmatic Lutheran theology sometimes claims to be different than pietism. The pietism of the day certainly went along with the truths of dogmatic Lutheran theology, but they asserted that there has to be a transformation of the person, and that's not unreasonable, really, when you think about it. One of the ways that religion is sometimes defined is a transformative, is defined in terms of transformation of the individual. So anyway, his mother was a pietist, and she taught him about nature and long walks in the woods. I read a biography recently about Kant. It was very nicely done, and this was very much some nice material from his early years. Kant credits his mother for awakening in him an appreciation of goodness. And on his tombstone is written the famous lines, "Two things fill my heart full of awe, the starry sky above and the moral law within." Right? So, very famous. He started in his early years at the Hospitalschule, but at the age of 6 he was sent to the Collegium Fridericianum, which was a place for boys. They had classes 6 days a week, with Sunday being spent in prayer and homework. Thank you. Kant later called these his hardest years. He studied Latin and religion primarily. There was no training in natural philosophy and little in math. And of course, the sciences were regarded with a bit of suspicion here at this pietist school. And actually, this did keep Kant probably from becoming a great mathematician. He remained undeveloped as a mathematician throughout his life, even though he's brilliant, of course, one of the greatest minds in history. And his math teacher at the university in 1740 did not know the new calculus, right? He didn't know how to do that. And his father died in 1744, and his mother in 1737, and his mother's death was particularly hard on Kant. Kant then, at the age of 20 or so, set about thinking about Newtonian forces, and he wrote his first book. Now, interestingly enough, if you read this biography, Kant did seem to really enjoy the Latin playwrights, Catullus and others, and there might have been a bit of ribald nature to some of these ancient Latin poets, and maybe that appealed to Kant to some degree. We don't know, but he did like that kind of thing. The thing to remember about Kant is not to put too much stock in the biographers of the old Kant. Just because Kant was very regular and walked at the same time every day when he was 78 years old does not mean he was that way when he was 38 years old or 48 years old. In fact, the book by Kuhn, I think, anyway, I have to check that. Read it a while back. But Kant enjoyed wine. Kant enjoyed a party. And oftentimes at the household, the woman of the household would have Kant over by her because he was really fun at the table, right? He was quite witty, very witty guy, right? Okay, Kant dropped out of the university in his early 20s after completing this book. without a degree, and he became a tutor. And although the 256 pages of this book would have gotten him his master's, he did not publish it. In the book, he attacked Leibniz's view, which I just talked about ad nauseum, of windowless monads, and Christian Wolff's notion of moving force. Although he attacked that, or he did attack that, and he argued that force has more to do with being than with motion. So sometimes we think of Kant only really doing anything important after the age of 56 when he published his Critique of Pure Reason. But his early works are very instructive to understand what he was about. And he did some wonderfully interesting work early on in his life. Anyway, at this point, he's claiming that forces are the primary constituents of reality. He claims that forces produce action, and action produce location, and location produce space, and thus the universe. This would be in keeping a bit with Leibniz, if you think about it. We start with the active principle. This book did deny God as creator, claiming that all force itself creates, and that the term God is a mere placeholder for force. So in the 1740s, we already see that Kant, while he's always very interested in goodness, the moral law within, he oftentimes understands this whole God thing to be metaphorical talk about something else. Yeah. Personal God is not something that really, I think, communicates deeply to Kant. That's my own view. Descartes had claimed that everything was matter and motion, and that force was only a product of moving matter, that is, force is equal to mass times velocity. Leibniz claimed that it was the square of velocity, and that acceleration is conserved, not force. So, I mean, there was interesting things going on in the day. The situation was complex, but Kant ends up in his first book basically criticizing Newton. However, probably Kant really did not understand at this point that uniform motion is a state and does not need force in the way he thought it did. Anyway, through all of this stuff, Kant intuits, it seems like in his book, that living force, or dead pressure, if you will, is the constituent of the world. And he basically is holding that matter is ultimately energetic, right? And that its dynamic measure is momentum agents, energy. And in some ways, you could see this anticipates Einstein. Force fields fill up space. Momentum energy is a correlative space-time. So, I mean, it's just very interesting. Kant, from 1747 to 54, worked with tutoring children in the Baltic area. Now he studies Newton deeply. Probably might have done that before he criticized him, but anyway, he studies it deeply now. In 1754, he writes on the spin cycle of the Earth. In 1755, on the history and theory of the sky. In 1756, his physical monadology claims that particles are merely force concentrations whose solidity is due to a dynamic interplay. Again, you see the influence of Leibniz. Here he is basically not holding that God is needed in nature's development. Creation seems to be the self-organization of nature. And it's really astonishing here that Kant seems to come to a nebular hypothesis conclusion. He theorizes that the universe has attractive and repulsive forces that form a spinning frisbee as centrifugal forces flatten the sphere and light up the middle. Galaxies, stars, and planets are formed. And then thus the universe seems to fluctuate between chaos and order. And in doing so, it is creating. So this is interesting. Kant seems to be working towards a view that all things in the universe are interactively connected. I'm Dr. Dennis Bielfeldt of the Christ School of Theology. We'll come back to more on Kant, and I'll be right back. Thanks.